It's time for number 35 in my series of video game movie reviews, with the 5th entry in the most acclaimed video game movie franchise ever. Yeah, okay. Resident Evil Retribution is brought to us by director Paul W.S. Anderson and stars once again Milla Jovovich as series protagonist Alice. We pick up the moment that Resident Evil Afterlife, the previous and 4th film in the franchise, left off. Alice, it seems, is once again trapped in an Umbrella Corporation facility. And this time, you guessed it, she has to battle her way out for survival. And that's pretty much the movie. It's just her and a group of characters trying to fight their way out of this facility. Yeah, we've seen this before. And that's not where the similarities end either. A good bit of this movie is dedicated to kind of reliving things from the previous film. There are a lot of characters that come back from previous films. Some that died in previous films, but you know, they work all that out. There are a lot of locations and even scenes from previous movies that come back in this one. This is kind of like the recap movie of the Resident Evil franchise, if you will. It's not all that, but there is quite a bit of looking back at the franchise up to this point. And when I originally saw this movie in theaters, I wasn't really too excited about that. I was excited to see the movie because I am a fan of the Resident Evil series, regardless of its quality and what a lot of people say about it. I do find it to be my guilty pleasure. I think the series as a whole is entertaining. It's popcorn dumb fun. But I remember after seeing this one, I just thought, what was the point? That was kind of meh. Now, fast forward 8 years later, upon another watch, I found it actually a lot better. I know, right? I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to find this movie okay at best, but I actually kind of liked it a lot more than I remembered liking it the first time around. And it's not just like better than crap either. It's actually pretty good. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie this time around. I mean, it's still a Resident Evil movie. Let's get that out there. So if you don't love Resident Evil movies, this one's not going to change your mind. But if you're kind of like me, where you enjoy them, some more than others, this one might actually be a bit closer to the top of the pile now. The first about 30 minutes of this movie is actually really good. I thoroughly enjoyed the first 30 minutes of this film. Not that the rest wasn't enjoyable too, but the first 30 minutes especially was a really good time. There's a lot of stuff thrown at you that makes you wonder what's going on. Not that it's confusing, it's supposed to be mysterious, but you're wondering what the hell's going on, what's happening? And the movie does a really good job of divvying up those details until you finally get answers about 30 to 40 minutes in. And I liked it. It was really entertaining. You get some characters that show up that you know died in other films, and you're like, how the hell are they here? You get some odd locations that you've never seen before, but you know can't exist, and you're wondering, how is this happening? You get some people acting really weird, and you're just really intrigued. You want to know what's going on here. They did a really good job in that first 30 minutes. Now, after about that 30 or 40 minute mark, it does kind of become more our traditional Resident Evil movie that we come to expect. But even then, it is still one of the more entertaining and better Resident Evil movies that we've come to expect. The movie's not perfect by any means. This is not Shakespeare. But within the Resident Evil movies, this one is one of the good ones. As I mentioned, the story is fairly basic, but I did like how it kind of went through some familiar territory and put a new spin on it. And that was admittedly pretty fun. The movie moves at a breakneck pace as well, and that probably helped too. Because if you had time to stop and think about it, a lot of the shit makes no fucking sense, but that doesn't matter because it is entertaining. And like I've always said, that is the #1 job of a movie, is to entertain you, and that is something that Resident Evil Retribution does, is entertain. Now, I will say that this Resident Evil is probably the most video game-like out of all of them thus far. They spend the entire movie going from location to location, almost like they're going level to level. I mean, literally, it is like they go from level to level, and they have like a boss fight, and then go to the next level. It's kind of funny if you think about it. But they do make it work, I'll give them that. I think these movies have gotten to the point now where they don't even take themselves serious. They're just here to have a good time and look cool while they do it. Now, about that looking cool thing, one of the things that any movie can do to typically make something look cooler is put it in slow-mo. Some movies do this more than others, and Resident Evil Retribution is one of those movies. If I had to guess, I'd say at least 62.85% of this movie is shot in slow motion. If you put all the slow motion in this movie at regular speed, it would probably only be about 45 minutes long. Doesn't ruin the experience or anything, because admittedly, the movie does look really good. And those slow motion scenes look really nice too. But holy fuck, there are a lot of them. Like 300 levels of slow motion. Every other shot, it seems, is going slow-mo at some point. It's actually pretty comical if you sit there and think about it. Now, as mentioned a moment ago, this movie is pretty. Like, it just looks really nice. And there's some great cinematography here. There's no quick cuts and shaky cam and all that shit. You get to see everything that's going on in all its beautiful glory. And regardless if you like this movie or this franchise or not, you can't deny that what's on screen looks really nice. And most of it's going really slow, so you have a lot of time to sit there and look at it too. Now, like I said, the story as a whole, while pretty basic, is entertaining. Even more entertaining than I initially thought back in the day. But one of the coolest parts of the story is the very end of the movie. The end of this movie is a cliffhanger, but it is a pretty damn cool cliffhanger that really has you hyped for the next movie. If you only knew though. Now, regardless of what that next movie ends up being, the end of this movie and the implications of what it could lead to is really fucking cool. From a performance standpoint, it's Resident Evil. Admittedly, the performances here are probably the best they've been in the series up to this point, but it is still Resident Evil. However, to give credit where credit's due, for the most part, everybody on screen does a fairly good job, especially compared to the other Resident Evil movies. Now, while the cinematography and everything else about this movie is really pretty and looks great, how about them CGI special effects? The Resident Evil series has been known to have some pretty bad effects at times, and here, for the most part, they're pretty good. There are a couple of creatures that, while they don't look bad by CGI standards, they do still look CGI. The Licker in particular, while yes, it's good looking CGI, it is very obvious that it is CGI. But it does seem like they did a fair amount of the effects in this movie practically. And me myself, I really appreciate that, and it shows on screen. Now, there is still a fair amount of CGI here, but most of it does look actually pretty good. And it looks as if they did as much practical as they feasibly could. And that definitely pays off in the believability department. There's one scene with a car that's like going through a subway station area. That one is pretty suspect, but it's fairly quick and it doesn't like totally ruin the movie by any means, but it's definitely there, and that one pulls you out for just a second. But the movie's moving so fucking fast and has so much shit going on that you pretty much forget about it immediately. Guys, surprisingly, this was one of the better Resident Evil movies up to this point. I remember not really caring for it much originally for some reason, but this time around, I actually had a really good time with it. It's got some decent performances, some really good effects, it looks fantastic, and overall, it's just a really fun movie. And because of that, Resident Evil Retribution is absolutely worth the rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
I was really surprised that the fifth movie in this franchise ended up being one of the best ones. But I'm happy to report that it is. And while it may not change anybody's mind about the series, if you are a fan of the series in the slightest bit, check out Resident Evil Retribution and you won't be disappointed. So there it is, guys, my review of Resident Evil Retribution. If you enjoyed, want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Tokyo.
I'm gonna kill you.
Good luck. You'll need it.
What's next in the video game movie review list? Oh no! It's another one that I didn't really care for when I initially saw it in the movie theater. Who knows, maybe all these years later I'll end up liking this one more as well. Probably not.